Okay, so next up we have Jonathan Fanning from the University of York, and he's going to talk about interactive teamwork, playing games with your students.
Right, I'll commence then. This presentation is slightly different to the others in that so far people have been told you what they have done, whereas I'm going to be telling you what I am going to be doing, which I did, and I think therefore that I hope it's useful and gives some idea of the sort of things trainers are making. First, I should state that I'm a senior manager in international strategy at the university, senior lecturer in international strategy at the University of York, and I deliver a course called Strategic Planning, which I've been teaching for over 10 years, which is a master's level course. And we adapted it to a very different way of presenting it over the last few years. So one advantage I had when we went into COVID is that I'd already recorded all the lectures. Because I'd actually decided a few years ago that the sort of students I had spending time, it was a small team, spending time in a lecture wasn't a great idea. So I had that, but there were also other changes I've made that I've now been rushing to adapt to the COVID environment. Okay, so let's go ahead. So briefly going to describe what I did pre-COVID. I'm going to try and explain what I intend to do next term. And then I'm also going to make an offer to come back and tell people at the end of term what actually happened this year, if people want that. And if I don't come back, you'll probably get some understanding as to why I haven't come back, as to what happened. So, and again, I do very much recognise that there's possibly a big difference in the quality of some of these things. Let's see. Okay. First was my module itself, dealing with strategic planning, has a major issue. There's a major problem, the subject itself. Strategy has a poor reputation for delivery. I'm sure we've all had strategy documents released by the university, and I'm sure you're all shuddering at the thought of them. And I'm shuddering at the thought of them. I wrote one myself, the very first one I actually wrote before I was a lecturer. I remember being praised to high heaven as a beautiful document, having a wonderful cover, being put in a shelf, and that was, I think, the last time it was ever read by anybody. I also came for this from a background in engineering, and it was kind of like I realised the problems with strategy and the reputation of strategy was very similar to the problems we had with engineering. And for instance, if we look at the history, we're all used to engineering projects overrunning. The 5 biggest overruns in history as of 2014 were the Channel Tunnel, the Three Gorges Dam in China, Boston's Big Dig in the USA, Great Berlin Airport, and the Great Belt Fixed Link in Denmark. Now, many of you may be thinking the same as I thought when I first looked at this list. Yeah, I can understand the France, the UK, and the USA might have a history of not producing time, but China, Denmark, Germany, maybe there's an actual problem with the way we do things here rather than these being one-off project issues. So I've been looking for a long time at the idea that we all may be familiar with the IT productivity paradox, which is that the more you invest in IT, so in the financial sector, the less it shows up in the bottom line, the less poverty it had. Now, I was wondering if there might be some connection between this. I'm not going to go into a great deal about the economics of it, but I'm going to say that this problem can actually develop both in the big scale and the small scale. For instance, a few years ago, my wife suggested to me that my son might like a climbing frame. So I asked the guy who cuts my lawn, because I know he's actually does building work, to actually arrange to put one up for me. I came home from work one day, and this is what I saw. There were 3 trucks parked outside my house. I've seen less builders turn up to build extensions. And this is what they built. This little, you probably might not be able to see it, but this tiny little fella here is the child, and this is the entire construction. Again, you can look at these and you can go through a whole reason of what the problem is, that actually that it's to do with people not understanding the project, etc. But this is a very, very common. Projects just rush out of control. So I decided that I won't go into the huge back of the economics, but I looked at something called the falling rate of profit and applied it to this on the research level. And it came out with a suggestion that the problem actually was we were teaching models that were inappropriate and didn't work. And actually, we taught these models using models which were inappropriate and didn't work. So the problem we actually had was I'll rush through this bit. We were actually teaching people using methods that we didn't work. We were then assessing them on their knowledge of the methods that didn't work. And we're asking them to put a little bit of conclusion at the end that actually the problem was this, and it was almost like the only part that we were actually really usefully teaching them was the actual parts at the end that said that why they thought things were wrong. So we had to think of a new way of doing this. Like I said, I got rid of lectures, so that maybe put me in a strong place with COVID. That actually I got rid of the lectures, I recorded them all so I could spend more time in the course. And I also decided that we actually had to look at it from a completely different point of view. That that historically, we had something called strategico-stochastic, which is a strategic thinker. I apologize for my pronunciation. And this is the people who look at the models, they understand the models, they understand the steps taken in good project management. They have these kind of effective examples. They've got things you see, all these books published. They got 7 habits of highly effective people, the art of the deal to connect to someone that's effective, all these kind of things, like this idea that there's a way of doing things. And if you learn the way, you will succeed. A bit like the Mandalorian. Anyway, we go forward and we looked at, and this is the method that we see to failing. So we also say to things, actually, to produce a good strategist, people actually achieve things. You look at it, they tend to be much more reflective and much more standing. The problem we came up against talking to our students who liked the approach, which was a game-based playgate approach, was the fact that when it actually came to looking for jobs, companies required they required strategic thinkers. They required people who had this knowledge before they'd let them in. And if we wanted them to become this, we had to do some point of view where they were able to do this because they were able to have the knowledge of the first to do it. So we had a dichotomy there. We had to teach the wrong method and the right method if we were to have any impact on what our students achieved if they went out there in the world. I kind of think this is kind of an evangelical course to a certain extent. Okay, so we teach both. The module itself, very briefly, it's the second term 20 credit master's module. It's a very diverse cohort: South Korea, China, Indonesia, Peru, UK. I'm just going off the top of my head the people we have on it starting this week. Extremely dedicated students. 100% attendance is not unusual in the classes. It's only about 30 to 35. But the key to the thing is at the centre of the course, we have strategic simulation, which is basically, it's similar to the electronic ones used online, but it's paper-based. And the aim is that students need to be able to cooperate as well as compete. And this is a COVID problem, because I have run straightforward online courses before with straightforward purchased simulations at the centre, and the students can then just get on and do them, but they are all about competition. They are 5 or 6 teams all trying to outbid each other in a business or something like that. And we actually wanted something that is cooperative. Okay, so that people get the knowledge from working together and competing. There isn't a competitive element to it. You can win the game, but you also actually, the only way to win the game is to build a cooperation with the other teams. But of course, also do it in a slightly better way than the other teams do it. So we're trying to get to understand how do you do the job and how do you become a strategist. So the course is done too. I'll come through this a little bit to save time. Okay, so what we actually do is we start off by playing a simple game. And the game that we play in the first day, in the first course, is something we pick this up. It's a commercial game. It's called Bucket of Doom. And the idea is to convince students that they're going to have to work together as part of a team. Normally it's done in class. We draw cards out of it. Bucket of Doom is a game in which you're given a series of escape room scenarios, ridiculous ones, in which you're going to die. And you're given a useless tool. And you have to come up with a way to escape from the death using your useless tool. So it works like that. Escape from seriously bad situations with the help of seriously useless objects.
We've got 2 minutes left, John.
Sorry?
2 minutes left.
2 minutes, okay. I'll jump through that. The game's a lot of fun. The problem we have with it, of course, is that we now have to turn it into a COVID game. So we have to set up a Zoom main room for everybody. And then we have to get them to break out into their individual teams, to work with collaborate rooms, discussion boards, return to the main room, make sure the short, pithy presentations. We also have, of course, I'll jump through this, in the main game, which runs for 8 weeks. And I'll go for, like I've already gone through most of this. But the aim is, of course, that go for this bit because this is not important. This is the important part of it. We have to have a strategic game in which they make 7 or 8 decisions as part of teams in COVID tools. So they have to journals for ongoing work, so they have discussion boards. I'm open to suggestions, personal reflective journals for assessment, role tools. So go to that private groups because they have to take roles of fire spirits and police. It's very complicated. And my fears about this, of course, is chaos as they learn the tools, a minority level of engagement, which we've had when we've used the student before, and too much division of labour in which people say, don't get involved in the game, and some people do other things, and people, only small numbers play the game. And of course, there may be many, many others. So I'm really open to suggestions, because you can still save me at this point. The module starts Monday, which is when we play Bucket of Doom. Go for that. The main issue I'm trying to say here is this is what we are planning to convert into an online course for the next 2 weeks, the next 8-10 weeks. And I am very much open to suggestions to how you think this might go and what you might think we should be doing about it. And I'll happily come back and report what happened in 15 weeks' time. And how
Thank you, John.
time?
Sorry, did I just cut you off there, John?
I'd say hopefully we're inside time then.
We are. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have time for questions. But what I will say, John, is we would love to have you back to find out how it went. I know there's been a lot of chat. I was going to ask if you'd be able to jump into the chat and answer any of the questions, just so we can kind of keep the whole session to time. So apologies about that, but thank you so much. It was a really interesting presentation, and I love the idea that you kind of, at the end, you can still save me. I think that's fantastic. And you've got many people here that might be able to help out. So please use the chat as well. So thank you so much, John.
Okay, I'll go into chat now. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.